I'd like to call the meeting to order for the Board of Selectmen on June 7th, 2022 at 6:05 PM. Could I have a roll call, please?
Teresa A. Moss here.
Jess Sexton-Duranian here.
And Veronica Tal here. Please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all. Thank you. I'd like to announce that the meeting is being recorded. It will be posted on the town YouTube channel after the fact, and it's also live on Channel 9. For chairman's additions and deletions, I would like to delete 1.6 minutes. We have no minutes ready for approval today, and I would like to add as section 4.8, 6 road opening permits. So we all good with that? Okay, does anybody else have any additions or deletions?
No.
Nice. All right. Moving on to 1.5, the public comment period. Are there any public comments to be had?
Veronica, I just
Yes.
wanted to mention, I don't know if you got the email or not, I'm not able to make the MRPC meeting Thursday night. So if you could join, you would be our voting member on Thursday.
I believe we appointed Chaz, and Chaz is going to attend for me on Thursday. So, and he was just sworn in
I was
tonight.
just sworn in.
So this is very
wow.
timely.
So I guess my public comment is appropriate at this time.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right, so thanks, Lori. Any other public comments? All right, so we have 6:10, we still have a little bit of time, right? Should we go down to 3.1? It's 3 minutes. Or will that take longer? Well, let's go to 3.1. We can at least start that. This is for the appointment to the RECC committee, which is for the communications center. It's the board for that. So reading the notice, please consider this a request that the Board of Selectmen appoint 3 members to serve as members of the Patriot RECC board. The request is pursuant to the intermunicipal agreement for public safety communications and related services signed in December. Composition of the RECC board discussed in section 4 of the agreement consists of 3 officials from each member town, the police chief, the fire chief, and 1 member of the Board of Selectmen or the designee. As you are aware, we are set to transition services to Patriot in FY23 and have started to work through the logistics involved in the process. Given the complexity of the project and the need to make operational decisions concerning Patriot, it is prudent to seek this board as soon as practical. Please feel free to contact, this came from the chief of police, to contact me should you wish to discuss further. So that is for discussion at 3.1. So I think at this point, what we're going to do is go back to the joint meeting. So that saved us a minute or two there. So we do have a joint meeting with the planning board for the appointment of a member tonight. So Laura, would the planning board like to open the meeting? I'm not sure who the chair is of the planning board right now.
Lori.
Laura,
I
are you
am.
the chair? Congratulations. All right,
Yeah,
so
thanks so much.
would you like to open your meeting?
Yes, I will. Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd like to call the joint planning board meeting with the Board of Selectmen here this evening, June 7th, 2022, at 6:10 PM. I'd like a roll call vote, please. I do have a majority of the board here.
Carol Hoff,
That would, Yep. Carol,
Ian Ortiz
and
present.
Ian is currently not a member of the board, so he's an affiliate member. Michael, I believe you're on.
Mike Verosco, present.
Okay, and that is the roll call for our board. Madam Chair, would you like me to proceed with our motion?
Sure, that would be great.
Okay. The planning board at their regularly scheduled meeting on May 23rd made a unanimous motion to appoint Ian Ortiz Santiago to fill a vacancy until the next election. So I would make, on behalf of the planning board, by the majority vote of the planning board, and hopefully the Board of Selectmen, to fill the vacancy until the next election with Ian Ortiz Santiago.
And is it-
Our board voted unanimously, so that motion is on their behalf. So now it's up to you to vote.
Okay, so I guess, is there a motion to appoint Ian Ortiz Santiago to the planning board?
So moved.
Second.
Any further discussion?
Madam Chair, if I may,
Yes.
as liaison to the planning board, I will say that Ian has been an active member in the board in the absence of this vacancy, and I believe that he's submitted all of the proper paperwork, and the planning board has followed all the proper rules and regulations that are required of this. So I ask the board to unanimously vote for Mr. Ortiz as a full member of the planning board.
Any further comments? Then I think we're ready for a vote. Teresa
Teresa A. Moore, yes.
Chad Sexton Duranian, yes?
and Veronica Kelly, yes. So welcome, Ian, as a
Welcome.
full
Thank you.
planning board member. And
a pleasure.
I guess my question then, Laurie, is for you. Do you need to post now for an associate member of the board?
Yes, we do.
Okay, so you'll take care of that.
I will, by direction, yes.
Okay, or by vote at your next meeting or whatever, so, okay.
Yeah. Okay.
All right,
Thank you very much. Yes, we appreciate it.
so do you need to adjourn your meeting?
I will entertain a motion to adjourn the planning board portion of the Board of Selectmen's meeting.
I'll make a motion to adjourn the planning board's section of the selectmen's meeting.
I'll
Is there a
second that.
Thank you, Michael. Any further discussion? Hearing, seeing none, I'll take a roll call vote to adjourn. Carol?
Carol Hoff says yes.
Ian? Ian?
Ian Ortiz, yes. Microphone was off.
Michael?
Mike Verosco, yes.
Okay, we are adjourned. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome
Thank
aboard.
you, guys.
Good night.
Good night.
Okay. All right, moving back to our RHCC motion. I'm right on that. So we need to appoint the police chief or designee, fire chief or designee, and a board of selectmen or designee to this board. I have spoken as the liaison for public safety. I spoke to both the police chief and the fire chief around this. And they've been working on this for about the past year.
Right.
And there's one member of the fire department who has also been working on it, Michael Grimley. So my thought is to appoint the three of them with Michael Grimley as our designee through, I would say, the end of December or January.
Probably January, because I think it was in January that the
Yeah, we signed, I think it was through the end of December, but I think because of the holidays, it would be good to go through the end of January and then appoint for a year that going forward from there. And that way we could see where it was at and see if we would appoint a different designee or a select board member at that point.
Mhm.
So, Eric, do you want to say anything more than that?
No, I think that makes sense. I did talk to Chief Shepherd about it, and I think the technological knowledge during setup is pretty critical. And so having a member of the fire department who's first in the technology piece while they're getting everything set up, I can work on that. I think it makes sense, and then we can revisit it.
I agree with that.
And Eric would be able to attend the meetings just as an observer. I think the meetings are open anyway. I'm not sure.
I don't know, but I did talk to Gary, and he would be getting regular updates and providing me with Zoom links. So
Yeah,
that I can,
I'm okay with that.
Right.
Mm.
So until, and then we'll see what the role of the board is once setup is complete. So it made sense to me. So.
Say you, Teresa.
I am fine with that plan.
Okay.
All right, so then, should we, just one motion to appoint all three members?
I'll make a motion that we appoint the following members to the RECC committee. Police Chief Sattel, Fire Chief Shepherd, and is it fireman? Is that the right term?
Lieutenant, I believe.
What? And Michael Grimley,
Grimley, yeah.
for a term to end at the end of this year.
Second that.
Through, let's say through January 30th, correct?
Okay, for a term to end through January 30th,
Of
2023.
All right, and then we'll need to remember to to appoint in January again. So, is there a second?
I second.
Did I miss it? All right, any further discussion? All right, Teresa, I'm going to do the roll call vote. even
Teresa
though-
A. Morse, yes?
Shall I Sexton Duranian, yes?
And Veronica Bell, yes. All right, the next one is a letter that we received from, let me get to mine. From the Conservation Commission regarding their reappointments for 3-year terms. So do we want to take these one at a time or?
Yes, I think we should.
Okay. So I'm going to read the email that we received. Hello, BOS. At tonight's 5/25/22 conservation meeting, the following motions and votes were made. Kindly add to the next appropriate BOS agenda for your appointment discussion. Joan Savoy, recommendation to reappoint for a 3-year term. 4 yes, 1 no. Jim McQueer, recommendation to reappoint for a 3-year term. 4 yes, 1 no. The terms for each currently end at the end of June. So information on their reappointment is appreciated prior to this time so we can plan accordingly. Please let me know if you have any questions or need more information. Thank you, Jessica Consalvo, Conservation Agent. So that was what we received. So is there a motion to appoint Joan Savoy for a term from July 1st through June 30th, 2024. No, 2020,
2025.
2025.
I'll make a motion to appoint Joan Savoy to the Conservation Commission to a period to end on June 30th, 2025, a 3-year term ending June 30th, 2025.
Is there a second?
My second time.
All right, any further discussion?
I just know it wasn't a unanimous. I can't speak to that. Do we know anything more than that, how the vote went? I didn't
I
see
did
anything.
not watch the
Maybe neither.
meeting. I wasn't in attendance at the meeting, so all I have is what's here.
Okay.
I did watch the meeting, and each of these individuals voted no on each of their nominations.
Respectable.
Correct.
Okay, that's what I thought it would most likely be. Okay.
Okay,
Thank you, Chair.
so do we have, so I guess time for a vote. Teresa
Yes.
Chess Sexton Uranian, yes?
and Veronica Kell, yes. All right. Is there a motion to appoint Jim McQueer?
I'll make a motion that we appoint Jim McQueer to a 3-year term to the Conservation Committee with the term ending June 30th, 2025.
And I'll second that.
Any further discussion?
Madam Chair, if I may.
Yes.
I have a couple of concerns on this recommendation. Concern number one is that the board had gone through a disciplinary hearing last year, and in that there was a lot of information that was brought up to former Selectman Shank and myself in order to move forward with that. Since that particular time, I have been watching the decorum of the Conservation Commission board meetings and all of that. I have a concern about the way in which this individual has conducted themselves in a public meeting that we had in the town meeting, and also in other meetings. We did have a meeting at one point here in the Selectmen's Chambers where I had concern about the volume of the level of decorum was not appropriate, I didn't feel. There are other concerns that I have in regards to this, but I believe that we have spent a lot of time and effort looking at having people come to the table, collaborate. We want to work as a team. We want to put things together. We want to move this town forward. We've been very, very successful with that. I feel that if we agree to this appointment, that there may be some backstepping in regards to that. And therefore, I firmly recommend that we do not appoint this person on the Conservation Commission.
Any further comment? All right, then we're ready for a vote. Teresa?
I vote yes.
Alice?
Chess Sexton Uranian, no.
And Veronica Kell, no. I will second some of the concerns that Chaz brought up. I am a no vote. All right, moving on. The vote to appoint a BOS member to the Board of a BOS member to the Joint Transportation Commission. I will say that I've been on the MJTC committee for the past 3 years, I think it is. And if I would like to continue in that role through the end of March, if that's possible, only for continuity. I won't be my term is over at the end of April. So I would entertain a new member at that point. I guess I would like to, there are two projects that I would like to, two things that I would like to see going forward and to continue discussing at MJTC. One is the sidewalks at the harbor to support the rail trail. And the other is to look at what we can do about the intersection of Proctor Road and the high school with the bipartisan infrastructure bill.
Mm-hmm.
And so I've already kind of put little seeds out there about that. But in any event, that's why I would like to continue, if you guys are good with that, until the end of March.
I have no problem with that.
I just want to, because the chair won't toot her own horn, so I'm going to toot it.
Okay, go right ahead.
I just want to say that Proctor Road and the harbor project, it's such a long process to get these types of things in the pipeline in order to get them done. And
Yeah.
I do want to say that Madam Chair has worked very hard, not only for the rail trail, the sidewalks, but not only on the Montechusett Joint Transportation Committee, but we've had other committee talks that we wanted to further that. I am 100% for you continuing your work on that because I don't want this to fall through the wayside.
And I have an email that I got from Brian Doherty just today that I'll forward to all of you after this meeting. So about the sidewalks, where to go with that. And things, so.
Okay, then I'll make a motion to appoint Veronica Kill to the MJTC for a period ending March 31st, 2023.
And I'll second that.
Oh,
Teresa A. Moss, yes?
Chess Sexton Iranian, yes?
and thank you. So we need to sign here. Okay, I'm just going to check this box to renominate the current representative, and maybe Chaz's vice chair, you should maybe sign that instead of me signing myself in there.
Do I just sign in that box?
What does it say? I think
It
so.
says signed by, name,
Signed.
title.
And Sabrina, while we're talking about method, I'm just gonna put the signed thing right back in here. And then we can take care of it. All right, thank you. All right, next appointment is for Patrick J. O'Connor as a call firefighter EMT. Is there a motion?
Yes, I'll make an appointment, a motion to appoint Patrick J. Connor as a call firefighter EMT.
And I'll second that.
Do we have a, no, it's not a time period. Never mind.
No, it doesn't have a time period.
And we don't have to have the language. It's not a
We
passing of.
we have decided, the Cory check and
Yeah.
all, because that's part of the regular process,
Okay.
we're kind of just trying to shorten up the motions a little bit.
Okay, Teresa A. Moss, yes?
Chess Sexton Iranian.
We have a second.
I second.
Yeah, he did, he seconded, I waited.
All right, thank you. Chaz, your vote,
Yes.
and Veronica Kell, yes. Welcome. All right, the next one is for two members of the Council on Aging. And these appointments are effective July 1st, 2022 to June 30th, 2025. So is there a motion? And maybe, can we do them in one fell swoop? Yeah.
I make a motion that we appoint Patricia Baker and Carol Sweener to the Counseling and Aging from a period from July 1st, 2022 to end June 30th, 2025.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Any further discussion?
I want to say that they've submitted all of the documents that we needed, Madam Chair, so we should be good to go.
Teresa, how do you vote?
Teresa Amos, yes?
Chad Sexton Duranian, yes.
And Veronica Kell, yes. All right, welcome Patricia and Carol as of July 1st. All right, we have an appointment for Jared Mariko for Cemetery and Parks. Idler.
I make a motion to appoint Jared Morocco as part-time intermittent season laborer for cemetery and parks.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Any further discussion?
Yeah, I just want to try to understand, what is the seasonal work done at cemeteries and parks?
I think it-
Really.
All the mowing
Yeah.
that gets done, anything else that needs done. I know this year we need more mowers than normal because we canceled the mowing contract
Mhm.
with, and so.
And they do site cleanup and that kind of stuff, so.
I'm good, thank you.
You're welcome. There is the town application is here.
Yeah, I saw that.
Okay, all right. Any further discussion? So Teresa, how do you vote?
Teresa Amos, yes?
Chad Sexton Duranian, yes.
And Veronica Kell, yes. The next one is another, well, it's a promotion, actually, for a firefighter. So is there a motion?
Yes, I'll make a motion to approve the promotion of Derek Mascalenko, for call firefighter EMT to call lieutenant EMT effective July 1st, 2022.
And is there a second?
I'll second that.
Any further discussion? All right, Teresa, how do you vote?
Teresa Amos, yes?
Chad Sexton Duranian, yes.
And Veronica Kell, yes. All right. Moving down to meeting business. And here we have a lot of, give me just 1 second to reorder pages here. Teresa, not Teresa, Sabrina, if I have these out of order, I apologize. All right, the first, 4.1, this is the first reading of the emergency funds policy. And what I had done is gone back through what we had discussed at the last meeting. I made the changes based on that. The changes were in 2B, as much information as possible is collected. Down in number 4, I took out the asterisk because that was noting that this was from the prior policy that we'll be superseding. In D, I changed that, and I hope I have the right words around warrant. So the way we have this been done is the community services coordinator will process the warrant and sign it. Is that what we wanted, as opposed to invoice? And then the other issue that I have is for 5C on the second page, I could not make that. The C should be a 6, and it should be out in line with the 5, and for the life of me, I couldn't make that work. I tried over and over. It was late at night, but I
So
couldn't
C
make
should
that.
be 6.
C should be 6, and I just can't make it happen. And so this, what we're looking at here, is the policy that will replace the worthy funds policy. So it spells it out a little bit more. So this policy will replace that. I left the version number at the top, and I guess we would call this policy 5. And it will replace the 2014-01 policy, which you can find under Selectmen's Policies and Procedures. And I think it says as administration of worthy funds. So instead of that, we're calling it Townsend Emergency Assistance Funds Policy. So the next thing is the, is this. The letter, well, no, I'll take that back. This is the policy. The letter, the emergency funds funding requests. This is the letter, so to speak, that goes to anyone who requests assistance. So it is an appendix to the policy, the emergency funds funding request, and I went through, the only change I made in this from the old policy is going through and removing the words poor and worthy. And hopefully I hit every place where that was, and I replaced it with emergency. So in the title, it used to be worthy funds funding requests, now it's emergency funds funding requests. I took out, Townsend has several funds, it was several poor or worthy funds. I took those words out. And I kept finding more as I went through. Residents interested in applying for funding through one of the town's worthy funds, I took out worthy, put in emergency. And then down where the information should be sent, I made it, instead of worthy funds, I put it emergency fund. So those are the content of the letter does not change from the old policy. But the wording, as far as how it relates to the reason, is changed to emergency.
And I noticed in the form, it says that, I don't call it a form, the letter, the funding request, it says that there is no application form requested considered, like completing this information, basically. At one point, was there an application form and this replaced it?
Not that I know of.
Okay.
Maybe before 2014 there was, but all I have is the policy that was, the 2014 policy that's on the website.
So I know that's supposed to be helpful, but for me, it just, I read it too fast. Like the first time I read it, the no was missing. So maybe it's just me, I'm old or whatever, but is that really needed, that one?
Oh, that sentence, we could take that out.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah, we could take
I
that
guess,
out. Yeah,
It's
it
being
really,
extraneous. It's not-
yeah,
I don't think it's really needed.
it
and
does
you
beg
can
the
actually-
question of, is there an
Was there-
application?
Right, right.
You know,
Like, did I
you're
miss
right.
You
it?
don't need to
or
explain the
whatever?
absence of something.
And it took me, well, granted, it
Sure,
was
I'm
like a
writing
2 in the
on
morning
mine, not on
reading too, as well, but I was like, there is an application form, and then it's like,
Okay,
really?
so I'm just writing things down for me.
Thank you.
Remove first sentence, second paragraph.
Oh, I think I accidentally did it.
All right, I'll take that out. So that the requests for funding are considered by a review team, and the review team is defined in the policy.
Mhm.
We should probably type up again the assistance funds interview sheet, because it's really, I think it was made in 2014 before there was word processing, because it looks like.
Certainly
I
before
bet
it was-
Sabrina would do a bang-up job.
So it's the exact same interview sheet. This is the sheet that whoever is determined, whether it's the community services or community outreach coordinator, or the community services coordinator, or one of the members of the Abram French team,
Mhm.
whoever calls the individual uses this form and fills it in when they talk to them. So.
I also think that on the funding requests letter, there needs to be a reference to a policy number. I'd like to get a date on it, because a lot of documents that are in town don't have a date on it. So when we look at it, we don't know when they were created or whatever.
So if we put at the top policy, I think I called this policy,
6.
no, this one is like 2. No, 4. 2, 3, 4, 5. This is policy 5. All right. 5-2022. I think one already exists. It's the Townsend First.
Yeah.
The second one is one of the ARPAs. I think I did 2, 3, 4 for the ARPAs.
They
This
do
would be
because the
5.
Townsend vehicle policy I put 2, so we need to change that.
The Townsend vehicle policy will be 6. So, and I need to get headers on all of these. We don't need we don't have a header on this. So it needs a header. The version number is just between me and Emily because we went back and forth on this. So if on the top of the, and I think I did this on the ARPAs, if we did policy number 5-2022, I'm writing on these, Sabrina. Maybe I shouldn't be. 5-2022, attachment 1.
Yep.
And then we did, for the interview sheet, policy number 5-2022, attachment 2. Does that make sense?
Mhm.
Okay.
And that way, if we have to search on the server, we'll be able to know what's the most current version of it.
Okay, so what I'll do then is I'll get with Sabrina and we'll get headers on these, and the signatures need to be put on them for the policy. We'll make these changes and we'll do a first reading next time. Does that work? And a second reading, the first meeting in July. The first reading, June 21, second reading, I think it's July 5th. Are we keeping that?
That's something that we should probably discuss at some point in time. Probably this meeting, so that we're not.
So that we can make plans for, yeah.
Plans? Personal plans? you mean?
Yes.
What's that?
Yeah, what are those?
All right. Anything else on the emergency funds policy?
No, good job, thank
So we'll
you.
make those changes. All right, next one is the ARPA policies. And again, what I did with all of these is, let me just write myself in there. Make changes. Make changes, see Sabrina. All right. Again, there were not huge changes on any of these. So policy 2-2022 is the actual policy. So I need to give it a name. So this will be the ARPA funds expenditure policy. All right. And changes I made, hang on a minute, get my copies out. Very, very small. In the first bullet, we notified the department by email using the project notification form. So it was suggested that we come up with a project notification form. So that's this page. And so this will be policy 2-2022 attachment 1. Well, there's only one attachment, so should we just call it attachment?
Call it attachment 1, because then if there's ever an attachment 2,
Okay.
you don't have to renumber attachment 1.
The only thing, and this came up today actually, is that the entity will, so looking under the third bullet, the second dash, the entity will provide the town accountant with the invoice for the approved project when the expenditure has been made. I would add the invoice for the approved project with the ARPA project number listed. So that we know what invoice goes with what project number.
Mhm.
So I would put that in when the expenditure has been made. And then the town accountant shall place the invoice for drawdown of ARPA funds for the designated project on the warrant for the BOS to sign. So the invoice will go to the town accountant and then it will come up to us on the warrant. Does that make sense?
Mhm.
Yes? Okay. So that's this. We'll put a header on it. We'll put the signatures down at the bottom. We'll give it an official policy name. And if I don't know, is there anything else that needs to go on this that you guys think?
I didn't see anything.
So I'll make the edits. The header. All right, so the thing that was new on this was the notification form. And again, I made this up based on what I thought should go in there and our discussion at the last meeting. So the policy name, the policy number, and then this is what we, the Board of Selectmen, will give to the department for all of the ARPA projects that have been defined. So if we're good with this, I would like to start writing these up because I am probably the person who has all the ARPA stuff, pretty much.
In
And
your head.
no, it's written down. It's down here. And I think it needs to get put on the selectmen's drive. It's just that we don't really have access to that. And so other than what I've put in the SharePoint, I'm not so sure there's an ARPA folder on the selectmen's drive at all. So we should we'll have to set up a time to
So
go
that,
through
and this is part of the reason why you should be able to get on the computer and download to that. We'll talk about it.
We'll talk about it, 'cause
But
it would be
you have access. It's just to be able to get it. You have access.
I have access, but I don't have his password.
That's what I'm saying.
So, okay.
So you could just download it yourself onto that drive.
Okay. So for the 18 projects or so that we have defined so far, I'd like to start filling these in so that, and then we can, at a meeting in July, approve them and get them off to departments so that people can start spending the money.
Now, you will, I'm not going to assume, you will be adding a Townsend header to that? I assume.
Yes,
Yeah,
there needs
I
to be
didn't
a
want to assume that.
Yeah,
That's
there-
it's a header and the policy number. and all
Header.
that.
policy
Okay, so
name,
that's
the policy
Townsend thing.
number,
Okay, I got it.
and all of that. And this will be the first attachment for that first policy for ARPA. Okay, the second policy for ARPA is policy number 3. And again, it needs a policy name. This is the reallocation of ARPA funds. So we've allocated the ARPA funds, but it's possible that you won't spend a department won't spend all of the money that is allocated to them, depending. So we can also, we can allocate additional funds as people are not spending or reallocate if it's already. Anyway, I'm calling this the allocation, reallocation, ARPA funds allocation, reallocation policy. And again, this was what we talked about. Let me see. I think it was the third one after that last meeting.
Mhm.
I decided to make
Madam
it
Chair, I
the
did have
second one.
questions about this one.
Pardon me?
I did have questions about this one.
Okay. The one thing that, from the last meeting, the one thing that I added was the funds prior to the under purpose. Funds prior to the ARPA project final allocation deadline of December 30th, 2024. All of the funds have to be allocated by December 30th, 2024 and expended by, maybe it's December 31st, actually. Days past September. They all must be expended by December 31st, 2026. So everything that you allocate, you're locked in at the end of 2024. and then you have 2 additional years to spend that money. So this policy will be in effect until December 31st, 2024. And that was the only note that I had to be added to this. So this needs a header, it needs the policy name, ARPA funds allocation, reallocation policy, and everything else is as it was last time. So, comments?
So I know you brought it up, but I'm just still getting a little confused on how it's done. I'm not talking about unused funds. That's very clear in the policy on unused funds. But what if we see X has a burn rate that's not going to burn down as much by 2026? And you can obviously chart that and see that the funds aren't all going to be used. But it's prior to, that the funds have been stopping being used at all. How do you make a determination to reallocate those funds that you won't need the whole bit, but you still want to keep it going to 2026?
I think that this would be something that the Board of Selectmen and the town administrator, we need to review these every so often and look at it and say, okay, we need to have a discussion about this. It looks like you're gonna need less, so let's reallocate.
And is that covered by this policy? Because I only saw that it discussed about unused funds, and I'm interpreting like that the person, we're no longer funding that particular thing, it's all over.
I understand what you're saying, and I see this as the ability for us to, I'll give you, for instance, we have allocated a fund for COVID-related funds.
Yeah.
Okay? And the COVID-related funds, we may in a year or a year and a half see that we have covered all of our COVID-related funds, and we may need to have more in, I don't know, the IT infrastructure. So this would be used to reallocate money from that one fund to the other.
Yes, that's the idea.
If I could make a suggestion, Madam Chair, instead of in that second bullet point, it says unused, if you just maybe change that to surplus?
Surplus.
Because surplus could mean that means funds that weren't allocated, but also funds that are in excess of the
That's much
purpose that
better.
they're
I
being
like
used
that word
for.
much better.
Yeah, okay,
That might.
that will do it.
That will do it.
Thank
And
you.
then, like you said, I don't think it has to be in the policy, but I think we as a board need to say that we're reviewing the burn rate on these and see where they can, but that's part of our job, so I don't think.
Yeah, my plan is to do periodic assessments of as part of the budgeting process, periodic assessment of the ARPA funds to make sure that they're being burned at the appropriate rate.
Yeah.
And if there appears to be a surplus, the first thing I would do would be to bring it to the Board of Selectmen for a possible reallocation, or talk to the department head about it.
We'll do it. Thank you very much.
Do I need to change the wording on this then? Because I have above those bullets, the Board of Selectmen shall, and the Board of Selectmen shall, and if you look at the bullets, it doesn't quite follow the shall. Approve and allocate, review surplus funds in order
No,
to
I think it's
reallocate it.
allocate, reallocate and reallocate surplus funds. Which is what you said this policy is on, so. Right?
Maybe I want to change the wording a little bit to,
Okay.
maybe we want to work on that a little bit, do you think?
Where are you?
In other words,
Which-
right here, it says the Board of Selectmen shall.
You're thinking about it grammatically, that the shall
I'm thinking
doesn't.
about it
Yeah.
grammatically, that's right, because it's the Board of Selectmen shall, and the first bullet, the Board of Selectmen shall, the second bullet, the
So
Board
the
of Selectmen
first,
shall.
the first word in each bullet should be a verb.
A verb. Okay, so I need
And then-
verbs.
I know my audience.
And then it's department and department, and they can't, a board of selectmen
Yeah,
can't shall department.
department, right, so I need a verb in each of these, okay.
Well, most of them, you have
There
the
is a
shall
verb in
halfway
there.
through, so just go past the shall. You see, like the next one down, department or organization shall make.
Yeah.
Well,
So you have to.
I have
clean it
to,
up
I
a
have to
little.
munch it a little bit,
Yeah.
yeah, to get it to, we'll work on
We
that.
get it.
Okay, so
Okay.
this one isn't quite right. Yeah, we'll get verbs
I would suggest actually taking the Board of Selectmen shall and put it in front of approve and allocate funding in the first bullet,
and just leave it at
and
that.
just leave it at that. Because I think the other bullets follow naturally.
Yeah.
The way they're currently
That
written.
makes sense.
Okay, and so maybe I want to, okay, I will do that. You're right, it does.
I think that it flows logically the way it is, and
Okay,
if you just move that into the first bullet, then you save your grammatical challenge.
Conundrum.
yes.
Conundrum, that's an excellent word.
Exactly, yes. All right, and then the next one is a form. This is policy 3, 2024. Again, this is attachment 1. It's the application form. So if someone says, hey, we want, this is the same form that came out, it's just that came out last time.
Mhm.
It's just that was borrowed from, I think, the city of Lynn that Jennifer had given me, and they had fillable PDFs, and I'm just making it a fill in the blank, just fill it in, not a fillable PDF. So anyway, this is, if there is an organization that wants to request a project, this would be what they would, or a department, this is what they would fill out per this policy and give it to the Board of Selectmen for consideration. So that's what this is. And I didn't change, and I'm looking to see, I don't think I changed anything in this. I just took out the things that would normally work in a fillable PDF. Yes.
Madam Chair, is this form also intended to be used for requests for reallocations?
Yes. Maybe we need to look at that more.
Application for allocation / reallocation of ARPA funds. I just didn't want somebody to think there was a separate form. Also, Chaz, do we have a
We'll talk about that on Friday.
That's what I feared your answer was going to be.
Yes, but we need to be
Yes.
smart when we
Yes,
deploy it.
yes, we do.
Okay.
And the only question I had is, number 2 is the type of project. Is there a specific list of project types or anybody's?
There is, it's
That's what I
in the
thought.
final rule from the Department of Treasury. You mean what's allowed for
Well, I
ARPA
just
funds?
thought that we might want to put it on the floor, because I thought there was a set list, that they said it was this type, that type, whatever. I remember on our form. we
Yes,
had a
there
set.
is.
And maybe if we gave those options here, it might
So-
help people.
Okay, attach the, I'm just calling it the Treasury allowable uses.
Oh, that spreadsheet?
Right.
Gotcha, okay.
Yeah.
All right.
You
Yeah,
mean, what
that's-
spreadsheet?
You
Maybe
did
I'm
a
not-
spreadsheet last meeting, was it last meeting?
Mhm.
That broke down,
Oh, what has been allocated?
no, it tells what has been allocated as far as you assign numbers to it.
Well, I think Teresa's talking about something from the Fed saying, these are the projects you're allowed
No, I
to
was-
use.
Going by that spreadsheet, because I saw they had type listed on there. I thought they did. Let me pull it up.
You're talking to,
Those are the things that are already allocated
Yes.
for
Right,
us.
but
Yes.
didn't, on that spreadsheet, wasn't one of the columns type?
but that's not the universe of types.
Oh,
There are other types of
There
uses
are.
in
okay,
the,
so I
that
want the whole
are possible.
universe.
Yeah.
That's what I thought, okay. So I'll attach the Treasury.
There are things that
allowable
we did
uses.
not
That's a
use
good
ARPA money
suggestion.
for that you are allowed to, that are in the
Yes.
usable types. And I think
I
that's
just
what you
think it'd
were.
be much easier when
looking
you're looking
for.
at it. too.
Okay, I'll include that on this then. That's a good suggestion. And that could be attachment too. And maybe I'll reference that. I mean, for our parliamentary vote. And you see allowable, so on the second bullet, I'll see the, whatever the official name is, Treasury allowable uses. services list, and that will be attachment 2 in the policy. All right. Anything else on this?
No.
Okay. The fourth one is for a sub-recipient funding agreement. And I made no changes to this from other than in the agreement. This agreement is pretty detailed, probably much more than what we're going to get in the town of Townsend versus the city of Lynn. But I left everything in that they have, you know, some of which may or may not. So if we have, and we do have one sub-recipient agreement that we need to finalize, and that's with TEO for the freezer.
Mhm.
So they would fill out this form and sign with us. And what Jennifer said is we do the reporting.
Okay.
So they would, so if you're looking at this, they would, you know, provide us with what they spent and the records, et cetera, et cetera.
No, I would leave all of that in there.
We never know, you
Yeah,
know.
I agree.
Could be. So this, I don't think I made any changes to that from what was in there last time, to the policy itself. I did work on the agreement, taking out, this is what it looked like before. So it looks a little bit different now. But I left in all the same, you know, things we filled out. And that is it. So this one, we would need a header. The signatures at the bottom. And
The header on the
same on the
and
attachment.
attachment.
Yeah.
Is this a separate one? No, that's the authorization.
This is the actual agreement form.
So
Yeah,
this
that's
goes to here.
the last page. It's not separate. It's, so, it's a signature page.
Okay.
So are we good with that?
I'm good with that.
Alright. So we will get those ready for a first reading and a second reading at the next 2 meetings. All right,
Good job.
great. So now to the social media policy. So Eric, I'm going to give this one to you, if you don't mind.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So you can see in the SharePoint, or if you have it printed out, I'm going to give Harrison a lot of credit. He worked off some examples I provided him to come up with a policy for town-owned and operated social media accounts. So the town has a social media policy that is for use of your private personal social media accounts. That currently exists. What we don't have is a policy for the use of town-owned social media accounts for the Facebook and Twitter and LinkedIn accounts that we have opened up but are not currently active.
Mhm.
So the idea behind this policy is to set up some parameters about posting and the kind of things that were going to be posted onto the town's Facebook and or Twitter accounts. As you can see, the goal behind this is a sort of an information push out to the community. So we are going to have comments turned off for our Facebook account. That's going to be part of the policy in an effort to create a space where what we are going to be there for is providing information, not for community debate. The idea would be if there are kind of larger pieces of information that we want to post, we would put it on the city's website and then use the Facebook and Twitter pages to point folks to the city's website. We've already got some inquiries from other departments, including Highway, about Facebook and trying to put information out on Facebook. So the first things we would talk about doing would be putting out public meetings that are happening, meetings of the Board of Selectmen, other public board meetings, just posting them on Facebook and Twitter so folks know that they're happening, and also posting out things like road closures, things from road openings, things that any paving that's happening in town. We would obviously use it for unfortunate events like that happened last night. If there's a road closure because of an emergency, to allow to try to get out to as many folks as possible informational pieces.
Yeah, I've also talked to the land use, and we're certainly not ready for it yet. We've got a lot more work to do behind it. But we like to see the town get to be kind of known as a recreational community. So put it out there and allow people like, we have the Massachusetts Hiking Association to join it, and then see what trails that we have out here, et cetera. The watershed, birding, all those people, get them to come into town, buy lunch. Come in and leave.
So part of it would be the idea that we'd be putting out information also about things that the departments are doing.
Right.
So that the town knows what their tax dollars are being spent on. So they know that, the water department is putting in a water main along a certain stretch of road. And when that's going to take place, hopefully in advance of, trucks showing up and blocking up the street. So that's the goal of the policy and of the use of those social media platforms.
So currently we have, the police department has a Facebook page. The water department has a Facebook page. So is this also encompassing of those as well?
So this is a social media policy for the town. So those pages would fall underneath this policy if it's adopted in its current form by the board.
Okay.
We could carve out exceptions for them or different rules for them if that's the pleasure of the board. We could certainly say, the water commissioners have the authority over the water department's Facebook page, but I prefer to keep it. I think it makes more sense to have those streams of information focused through this building, this office, and this board as much as possible.
So I agree with you, but because of the lack of a policy, I think that we need to make sure that everybody understands this before this gets implemented, because there really should be I agree that it's important to get this out there, but I also agree that everybody needs to be following the same, marching to the same tune here.
So as kind of an aside, but following up on that, we are having a department head meeting on Thursday morning. So my goal would be, if the board is comfortable with the policy in its current form, I would let them know that this is a draft, but the board is likely to vote on this policy at the department head meeting. So it won't go into effect until July, because we'll have a first reading at the end of June and the second reading in the first meeting in July. So they'll have a good solid month to read over the policy and understand it. And if they have questions or concerns, they can bring it back to us about. There may be a reason why the police department wants to have a more rapid response on Facebook than this policy might allow. And
Right.
So, but I would like to present to them in a draft form, but say this is going to go in front of the board.
Right, and I'm all for, I want proactive things like this. This, I think, is very important. As much as my own personal chagrin is that Facebook happens to be the only place for people to get news, at least we have something that we can get the news out there. And if we're all following, and that's my concern, is that I want the information out there, but I don't want it on these other pages. If we have our official with no comments on it, so that we can get the information to the public where they can get it, I'm all for it. So I'm good.
I have a couple questions.
Sure.
Okay, this says Article 39. What document is this going in?
I think it's going in the policies and procedures document. But I can certainly double check that.
This is the personnel policies and procedures,
Right.
right? The one that we need.
The one that we need to update many other
Okay.
sections of.
That's good. Okay. So it's not an official, the Board of Selectmen policies that are on the website that we were just talking about. It's not, it's separate from that, which is good because the policies you were talking about was the applied to the personal
Right.
postings. Okay. So then I had a question, kind of relates to Chaz. The board, so reading under policy and responsibilities, the last sentence, the Board of Selectmen's office will have sole access to posting privileges overseen by the town administrator or a designee. And then going down under social media use in an official capacity, the second paragraph, first sentence, employees authorized to use social media in an official capacity shall submit posts to the town administrator's office for approval prior to publication. You could be really busy. The police page is pretty active. I've never looked at the water department page because I don't have town water.
They're pretty active.
So it's not, germane to me. But anyway, might want to think about that a little bit. I mean, I can see you and Sabrina sitting there. God, we have 10 posts that we need to read today and approve.
Sure.
We don't
And
want to do that.
my fear is kind of relating to what Chaz says, which is right now, those 2 pages are ungoverned by town hall.
Right.
And we have no idea what's being posted on them. And it may very well be that Chief Sartell and David Jant have policies that they are just kind of operating under for how things get posted. I would like them to tell me what those are, and if
And we can talk about it.
if we want to make the police chief also a designee who's responsible for the police chief's page, then I want Jay to come to me and explain to me why we should do that instead of
And
that.
that's kind of what I was saying too, because the more active pages have staff that, can go right in and make the changes pretty immediate. I
Right.
know that water has, for instance, if they have, a water main break somewhere, they are pretty active on getting it right out. there
Sure,
as
and
quickly as
I think
possible.
that's great. And if Dave has a policy for how he's doing it, whether it's written or not, I want to formalize it and figure out what they're doing and figure out the best way to operate that. But I want Dave to come to me and explain that to me when I tell him that we're doing this.
The library, I'm pretty sure, has a pretty good
Yeah,
Facebook
pretty
page too.
Do
So,
sorry. Go
no,
ahead.
that's okay. Go ahead.
Can there be than one administrator per page on the Facebook page? Does anybody know?
Yes.
So what I think we need to do is, like I said, see if they have the policy, what policy it is, make sure that it's following in place. But I think, the town administrator needs to have administrative rights to all these pages as well. And if he finds that it's not falling within the policy, he has the ability to immediately delete something offensive, not in conform with the policy. So it gives you that power without having to be responsible for all the postings.
Correct, and I don't want people to think that we're taking something away. It's just that we need to have continuity,
And oversight.
and oversight.
The other thing that we were, one of the reasons why we wanted to do this before we turned on the social media pages is to be cognizant of the public records implications of
Yes.
having a public social media page. And I want to know from the water department, if you're running your own page, how are you complying with the public records law? And if you're not, then we need to get that under control as a part of this process so that they are contemplating that and they're taking the steps they need to make sure they're preserving the postings
Right.
in a permanent way so that if 10 years from now somebody says, I want to see everything the water department posted on Facebook, we have the ability to do that. I think that's an important piece of this.
You're absolutely, I never thought of that. So, for instance, somebody said, well, you posted in 2005, or blah, blah, blah. we have to, as public record, because it is a town, we have to produce
We
that
have to
document.
produce that document or that data.
Right.
And that implication is something I want to make sure that every department that's running a page has contemplated and has a process for. And if they haven't, then we need to set that up before we continue to let the Wild West kind of go, which I think is where we are now.
Yes.
With a bunch of these different pages. And so, and also I want to set it up so that if they're posting something, if we figure out and Water is doing everything right, I'm not trying to pick on Water. If Water's doing everything right, I'd like their stuff to roll up to our Facebook page so that it's posted on the Water's Facebook page and then it's being posted on the home Facebook page so that
Right.
when police says something, if they're doing it right, it's posted on our page. If Water says something, it's posted on our page, so that we're collecting all this information as well. And we already have a process that I've talked to with the webmaster about how we are going to be preserving the data for public records. And I talked to the town clerk about it, and we have a process that we're going to be doing that preserves all that. And so if we can, this is kind of the beginning of a conversation that I want to make sure that we're having.
Good, and I'm glad we're having this conversation.
Another critique, just a critique sake. I'm not sure, I find it the term shall be used to increase citizen engagement. To me, if you're engaged, that's communication, so you can comment and stuff. And if we're not gonna allow comment, I'm not sure engagement is the right word. So I would think that it would be to increase the ability of town to disseminate information in a productive manner and make citizens aware of town or something. I think it's awareness instead of engagement, but
Change that to awareness. I don't think
We can change that to awareness.
Mhm.
I think for engagement, I was thinking of that more in terms of people would know when meetings are.
That's what I was thinking. It's
I
like-
know that's what he meant, but when I seen it,
Telling you
then
when
I'm
the-
thinking I can write on Facebook whatever I want.
Right, I would
Engage in that
not, I
conversation.
think it's right not to, having, that you should have comments.
Yeah, I don't think there would be anything productive having comments if we're going to be using it the way that I envision that we're using it, which is pushing out information, pushing out, here are some great scenic trails that you should
Yeah.
go with your family this weekend. Here's
Hey,
some.
we just finished the work on the, Adams Dam Trail.
Right.
Or something like that.
But one of the
Involvement.
constantly the feedback I get is that I didn't hear about that. I didn't know about that.
Right.
And if we have a central location where all departments are focusing any requests to that area, we should be able to negate a lot of
Yeah.
those comments.
No, I.
That's the goal.
Yep.
So people can't say I didn't know.
All right, so it looks good.
Yep.
So run it by and.
Yeah, so I will talk to the folks in the department head meeting about this on Thursday. I'll solicit their feedback, especially from the ones who are already running separate Facebook or Twitter pages. I think it's just Facebook. I don't think there are any Twitter pages, but I'm not 100% sure. And I can bring back any of their comments to the next board meeting.
And again, I want to say this, it's not for control. This is more that we're all doing the same thing. I want that. I don't want people to think that we're trying to
Oh, yeah, no,
other departments and all that. It's just that I believe having it uniform will allow us to have the ability to get the information where it needs to get out, and that's to our residents.
I agree.
All right. Any other comments on that? Good. Moving on to the contract for Ross for consulting.
Who's that?
Out of sight, out of mind.
I have a grammatical under
Is
1A.
that posted in SharePoint? I didn't find it.
It's
It
on
is.
SharePoint
I
in
missed
the
it.
folder.
Okay, I'll find it.
It was there yesterday. I know that's when I looked for it. So it wasn't there before that though.
Okay,
Teresa.
I
So
will-
if you looked on the weekend, you probably wouldn't have seen it.
That was when I looked.
But it was there yesterday. So 1A, you have until on. I would just take out the on. That's just a typo.
Got it. That will be gone.
And then I had a question about the date. Is that it's kind of backdated, 31st day of May?
Yeah, so we This, I can change, I will change that
based on,
based on the date at which we anticipate this
Okay.
being approved. So I will change that to, if we approve it today, today's date.
I saw the limits. This is in 3B, not to exceed 10,000. Is that enough? I know it has to be with what we can afford.
Right. So there's two pieces of this, which is because the goal is to get this contract in place so we can do, we can encumber the funds from this year to stretch over to next year. It needs to be an amount that's reasonable. Ross didn't have an issue with the amount.
Okay,
And I think that the goal would be, if we get that, we will need to reevaluate the process and what we're doing as we approach
that's the
the
goal.
$10,000 cap and
Okay.
see where we are, and whether or not it makes sense to continue kind of down that road and extend the contract or allocate it for more funds at that time.
And I think, and I spoke to you about this, I think that we can stay within that if he takes advantage and hands off a lot of the stuff, because I've already been people from the Energy Commission have already been reached out, and I'd like to be involved as much as possible to provide. I know there are high quality people there, project managers and whatever, so they're looking forward to help, so that will help. And he assured me Ross is really going to try to get as much of the work done by our NA commission, so.
That's mentioned in here.
The only other thing I had talked about to help keep that cost down of what he's spending was to allow, because by our vehicle policy use, he isn't allowed our vehicle, but Ross explained that wouldn't really make sense, him coming back and forth to the vehicle. So his travel would be into that. And that was my concern. Like if the gas goes up to $10 an hour, you can only make one trip into Boston.
That's it. You got it for one ride. I think that's the kind of thing that I think we could reevaluate and say, if he did have to spend a significant cost more than anticipated on travel, then that would be a reason for us to possibly amend the contract and extend for more funds.
It's almost like they said, we're watching on it and seeing that a significant portion of this has become for instance, travel into Boston. We really might want to look at having him use the car, maybe even having to take it home if he knows it's the day before or whatever.
I think luckily for us, there will be limited times when his presence would be needed in Boston.
Right.
There's going to be the hearing at the end of this month, and then,
And we don't even know if that's soon or not.
yeah.
It could be that that's soon.
Yeah, the last time I had to do a hearing with an administrative board in state administrative board in Boston, they did it via Zoom, and so we could do that from home. So they may still be in it. The state has been actually much slower than the rest of the Commonwealth to come out of doing processes that way. So there's a decent chance that could be a Zoom hearing on June 22nd.
The other question I had was under 4B. It had an or. During this contract, the consultant will use a non-Townsend email account or a Townsend email account as determined by the town. Can we just say it would be a Townsend email account?
If that's what the board, if that's what we prefer, I can certainly make that amendment.
I would for open meeting law and all of that.
Yeah, that's what
I think it would be better for him if we did it that
Yes.
way.
So I would just make that, we'll use a Townsend email address.
Okay,
So
I will make that
be
change.
assigned a Townsend email account.
Keep it secret.
Townsend email account. Okay, I will make that. Is it?
I think those were mine, those few things were mine, but, Chaz and Teresa, anything else?
I think that was,
I will say just for the record, when Teresa and I were talking about it, and she asked if there was a
don't
limit,
you dare
I'm
bring
going
that
to.
up.
I'm going to totally bring it up.
I asked him, how many hours are you thinking? And he said 10,000.
And so Teresa,
And I had to do my best poker face ever.
without even a gasp or anything, she's like, Oh, that seems like a lot. I was like, $10,000? I didn't think that was a lot. So the $1.2 million that Teresa thought I was going to spend on the contract.
But please note, Laura, if you can hear me, I kept my poker face.
I heard you.
Didn't even blink.
All right, so do we need a vote on this, or,
I would ask a vote to approve as amended.
okay? So is there a motion to approve the contract with Ross as amended?
Yes, good. So we're talking about amending the date that it starts. Is there an end date on that as well?
Until June 30th, 2023.
June 2025. So I will make a motion that we approve the contract for Ross Perry as amended.
Is there a second?
Second?
Any further discussion? Teresa, how do you vote?
Teresa A. Marsh, yes?
Jess Extenderini, yes?
And Veronica Kell, yes.
Would the board be okay if I used your stamps to stamp this once I edit it?
I am okay.
I am okay with that.
Okay.
And Eric, you'll stamp. Okay, good. All right, the next one is a request from the Energy Committee to have alternates assigned as committee members. So not really as committee members, but to have the option to have 2 alternates on the committee.
For quorum issues.
For quorum, yeah. You know, so,
Yeah, this was brought about because of the Energy Master Plan. They did find a chair for the Energy Master Plan, but now that we're talking about this plan especially, I think it would help to have some additional members.
So we're
Yeah.
talking about the municipal aggregation?
Yep.
That's what we're
Yeah.
talking about.
Yep.
I did a little bit of research in regards to that, and the way that's set up, I think that's a brilliant idea for them to keep that moving forward.
Yep.
So I'm 100% behind that.
so is there a motion? And my next question is, do we have to edit anywhere about the Energy Committee if we add alternates? Do we need to edit in,
Well, this, I think as we discussed, this is an ad hoc committee
right?
of the
Okay.
Board of Selectmen, so you may do with it as you wish.
Right, and I think to answer your question more formally, the only place that we would need to is on the website.
Okay, yeah, that's true. So Harrison,
So,
we'll put Harrison on.
So I'll make a motion that the Board of Selectmen approve the addition of 2 alternate members to the Energy Committee.
Is there a
Second.
second?
Teresa A. Marsh, yes?
Jess Extenderini, yes?
And Veronica Kell, yes. All right, so we're good to go with that. And Harrison will update the website to reflect the vote.
put that on his tape, on his workflow.
Okay, so the next one is the British and Commonwealth Remembrance Project. And Teresa, you requested this to be on the
Yes, so-
agenda, so do you want to read
Certainly.
the letter into the record?
Oh, I was gonna give you a little background first.
Oh, well,
but-
yeah.
Let me pull up the letter, but
I
Just
have the
for-
letter.
I'm joking. Thank you. That would help, yeah, if you could pass that down. But just for
I got one here.
a little background, I don't know if many of you know about, but we, for both World War I and World War II, we were delayed in our involvement in those wars, but that doesn't mean that many Americans didn't choose to go over and fight. Many of them went through Canada. They were called Eagle Squadrons during World War II. I knew a lot about the World War II because I studied that in my military training, but I wasn't that aware of the World War I. In the World War II, they were actually the citizens that went over were eventually given the opportunity once the Americas joined the war to be assigned to American troops, units. They had the choice whether to not. They also, but at the time, they were considered going against the Neutrality Acts, but that was pardoned for World War II. The World War I that this letter is about actually never had any of that problem. There was never a concern about neutrality. They were never had to be pardoned because no crimes were ever brought to them. So this is an individual from West Townsend that they like to honor, and I'll read you the letter. They're not asking for any money; they're just asking for permission to honor.
And, well, they want permission to do it on a piece of town-owned property.
Correct.
So
Yeah.
town properties would need to look at that or some such. Okay, go ahead.
Okay. Alternatives, if they can't, then they'll look like whatever. Okay, so, this is, the letter is from the chairperson of the British and Commonwealth Remembrance Project. We are a 501c dedicated to remembering and memorializing the sacrifices of New Englanders made during World War I and World War II. Our work specifically focuses on 500 plus individuals who volunteered to fight prior to US's entry into these conflicts. In most cases, these individuals joined British and Canadian expeditionary forces, and as such, they were not U.S. casualties of war and do not fall under the remote of either American Legions or VFW. I want to introduce you to Lieutenant Sorler, who lived in West Townsend, and he and his family attended West Townsend Baptist Church. They lived on what is now West Elm Street, then Elm Street, West Townsend. He's the town's first death in the action in World War II, and you can read more about him on
One or two.
Oh, thank you very much. World War I. I'm sorry. Thank you. And you can read about him. There's information him on Google, Facebook, etc. He is not commemorated in the town at all and is largely forgotten in our town. I'm a West Townsend resident. Our group wishes to change this. In cases like this, we've had small funds and dedicated volunteers and followers. We could either place a bronze plaques, perhaps on the Memorial Hall, or erect a memorial marker near the West Townsend Fire Station, or which is across from the Baptist Church, which he was a member. We would like permission to do this on a piece of town-owned property, if possible, with your blessing and cooperation. We would also value any suggestions or ideas on how to move forward.
So, I guess, what do we need here? A motion to work with them and maybe have town properties look at it and see what makes sense?
I think that makes sense. A motion to refer to town properties to meet with the applicants to see what the specifics of their,
And then bring it back to us for,
with the recommendation.
with the recommendation. So is there a motion then to refer this to town properties?
Yeah.
To work with the organization to find a place and then bring it, that where this might be appropriate and then bring it back to us.
I'll make a motion that we have town properties work with the British and Commonwealth Remembrance Project to see if we can locate a place to town property to place a commemorative marker for Lieutenant Sawyer.
I'll second that.
Any further discussion? All right, all those in favor?
Teresa A. Marsh, yes?
Justice in the Iranian, yes.
And Veronica Kelly, yes?
Madam Chair,
Yes.
I did have my hand raised. Town properties would be honored to do that.
Thank you.
Appreciate the opportunity.
All right, thanks, Laura. Oh, while I have you here, let me say this. I think we might need to reappoint people to town properties. If you could look at that and see who your members are, and if you need reappointments, let us know before our next meeting so we can get that on the agenda.
Yes, I actually we had that discussion at our last meeting. I know the current members were staying, And I thought I talked to Mike Crowley about seeking the other members that are required by charter. So I know we had the discussion at the last meeting. I will follow up.
All right, thank you. And thank you for being willing to participate in this project. All right, moving on. Vehicle use policy. So Chaz.
When we originally talked about this, it was to add the hybrid vehicle that we had taken back from the water department that was acquired by the town through a green community grant, I think it was. I've also, just being a liaison to several other boards, I realized that there is no continuity in this particular policy as well, much like we were talking in regards to the social media policy. So when the interim town administrator proposed the policy the first time, I really got to thinking that it's the whole policy itself really needs to have a look at it. The original policy was 2005. As we know, there's been a lot of changes in regards to insurance and all of that kind of stuff. And I also know that certain departments have specific needs and concerns in regards to the policy. So I went ahead and Madam Chair, when she first proposed it, had given us 4, I believe, different towns what their policies were that were close to our size and type of town. I combined them all together and using our original town vehicle use policy and put it all together. Our last meeting, we did talk in regards to the vehicle itself, and I call it the daily town hall vehicle, for lack of a better term. But I did add from what I had submitted last meeting, I added under categories of municipal use, I've added the daily town hall vehicle. Under the assignment and authorization for municipal vehicles, I put in a town hall vehicle assignment use, which addresses how the individual will get it, who is in charge, how that process is going to be.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
Is that number 3 on page 6?
That I just mentioned?
Yes.
No, it is on page 3. On the top of the page, that says town hall vehicle assignment use.
Go ahead.
So the assignment and authorization has general assignment, the town hall vehicle assignment, 24-hour assignment, and change of authorization to keep them all together. Okay. Everything else, the fringe benefit tax reporting, administrative requirements, those are all basically the same. We probably need to talk about the insurance section. That would be on page 5. We also would probably need to talk about mileage reports, how we want to talk about that. Those were the interim town administrator's comments on his page. And then the nuts and bolts of what the policy that he presented to us is under the governance of municipal vehicle use policy.
Okay, that's page 6.
Yes, and that is page 6. And that is page 6, number 3, that goes into page 7. And those are the policies that we discussed under his policy. And then I think I did change a couple of other things. For instance, it says smoking is prohibited in all municipal vehicles. I put smoking and vaping to keep with the times. And for Madam Chair, you wanted me to add an employee signature page at the very end.
Yeah.
So those are the changes that I put into it.
Okay, so Eric, this might be for you. Employees whose employment is regulated, this is under applicability on the first page, because there are some vehicles that are through the bargaining agreements.
Mhm.
So I guess the question is, does this cover employees whose employment is regulated by individual agreement or collective bargaining agreements, are subject only to those portions of this policy that are not specifically regulated by law or agreement? Is that covered?
Yeah, so what you're basically saying is this covers the field, except if there's a specific law or specific other agreement, either a union agreement or personal services agreement,
Okay.
that says something different.
All right. Then I guess I am good with this. Does it need to be run by the employees before we do the first reading and the second?
Two things that I wanted to, if we could touch upon. Number one is the insurance. I'm not an insurance person. I just write the check to them.
Right, or they pull it out.
Right.
Checking it out.
So I don't know if the bodily injury limits that I put on here and the property damage is appropriate. So I would like to know, we would probably need to check that with the insurance company. Oh, I knew you would have it.
And you have more faith in me than, so just to be clear, I have all of the policy limits for our insurance here
Mhm.
that we have under both additional and general liability. And so if you want, I can just tweak it so that this matches what we actually
Yep.
have.
Should we refer then to whatever instead of, would we then have to change this policy every time
That's actually a good point. So suggesting that it should have the same minimum levels of coverage as the town provides for all other town vehicles.
Yeah,
Yeah.
If we put it that way, and then the town decides it wants to up it, then
Right.
all the vehicles have to be up.
right.
So rather than have specific numbers, I actually think that's a very good idea.
And then we can
Then
include.
we don't have to change it.
Yeah.
Every time
Every time we change
time, right.
And then the mileage reports, I wanted to have some airtime on that too.
Before you go on, can I just go back to property damage?
Yeah.
So I need to understand, right? If I have a personal using a vehicle from Townsend, but you're saying I have to carry these on my personal?
This is if they're authorized to use personal vehicles for work-related travel. That means that if they're using their own car, they
Okay.
need to have these limits.
Right.
So like on my personal vehicle, I don't carry property damage because it's not worth $5,000. Okay, so I'm certainly not going to put $50,000 worth of insurance. I don't have any on it.
I think that's liability. So I think you're required by law in Massachusetts to have liability insurance for the other vehicle.
Okay.
So that's what I think is by
So-
property
so
damage. But I
that's
think
not
if we
prop-
remove
Okay,
this
okay.
and just said to have what we had in our own, what we carry on our own vehicles,
Yeah.
then it would
okay.
be clear that we're talking about the minimum that we carry for town vehicles. And that would be-
Right.
I got it. Okay, thank you.
And I can provide that information to all of the selectmen in an email. And then if that is a concern, what those numbers are, if we feel like they're not enough or there's a concern, then obviously we can, the next time we talk about the policy, we can suggest it.
And when the employees sign off, they should probably be able to see what we expect them to carry,
Correct.
from year to year.
Somehow
It says
that
they're
needs to be
required to
communicated
check it.
if they are indeed using their own vehicle.
Yeah,
I think that's
and that's,
important.
I think, what this refers to, correct?
Yes,
This second paragraph, anyway.
yes, for personal vehicle, this is for personal vehicles.
Right.
You good with that?
It's just, to me, property damage and $50,000 on a $5,000 red 1970
That says that I'm not gonna
truck.
park next to you.
Big guy.
Mileage reports, I'm not really too sure how that affects the police department. in regards to mileage and all of that. Is there a assigned vehicle log form from other departments? I mean, highway department too. I mean, those plow trucks go out. All that. Do they keep a mileage log for those?
Good question.
So, those are important things to.
This might be a reason for department heads to review the policy.
This is why I believe
What they
it.
do now versus what is here doesn't match.
Okay, so if it's the pleasure of the board, what I can do is take this draft policy to the department head meeting, ask them to review it and get back to me with any questions or concerns, and maybe we put it on also for our first reading on the
21st.
21st with we can discuss the feedback.
Right, because it's again, I don't want to create extra work for people, but I also want to make sure that we're in line with our own reporting as well. I know that with the vehicle that we have for the town, we're going to have to report that mileage to the insurance company at any given time. So, how do we report our other vehicles, town-owned vehicles?
Yeah, I think they just do there's like an annual, there's an insurance review when they're doing the renewals of insurance, they just obtain that information.
And they go out and they get the, but I think that it would be prudent for us to be able to know what the mileage is on those vehicles. And outside of that, Madam Chair, that's all I wanted to really add.
And if there's items that are completely different from it, like we have here about vehicles can only be traveled to and from residence and place of work. But let's say by collective bargaining, the police chief's vehicle, we can take it wherever we want. I'm not saying it does. I don't know, chief, what you can do. The only way we can do any of them, well, actually, he wouldn't get in collective bargaining, but the only way we can change anything that's in their contract is with the collective bargaining process, right? That comes first, and then this.
That would supersede
That's
this.
what- that's
supersede,
it.
absolutely.
Both the personal service contracts and the union contracts would supersede this.
And do we
policy.
have any idea how many vehicles we have under collective bargaining?
Well, I don't know that there are any, I think the only people that have vehicles that they're allowed to use personally are under personal services contracts. The one I'm not sure of is Dave, whether he's allowed to use his water vehicle and drive that home. 'Cause he's on 24/7 basically.
I thought no. I thought that no for the water department.
Yeah.
I know that the police department, I think the chief and the lieutenants can take vehicles home.
And the lieutenants would be covered by a collective bargaining.
It is in a collective
And
bargaining.
the water, I know, has an on-call, and the on-call would be, this was another reason why I wanted to make sure that this was updated, because the on-call means that you can take the vehicle home, but it doesn't mean that you can use the vehicle while it's home.
It's there in case you get called.
In
In
case
case
you
you
get
get called
called.
in, right,
Okay.
right. And is it, if you do live in Townsend, within a certain mileage to, where the vehicle is parked, do you really need to take it home?
That's my concern.
Yeah,
It
mine too.
raises with the prices of gas coming up.
And that's one of the reasons why
Or even worse, the person that doesn't live in Townsend.
Well, I think we run into a problem when we start treating employees who work in Townsend differently than employees who work out of Townsend.
Correct.
Yeah,
So we
sure.
need, the policy would need to be uniform, and so if the on-call person is allowed to take it home, it doesn't matter if he lives next door to the water plant or if he lives in New Hampshire.
Mhm.
It'd have to be, the policy would have to be consistent
Yep.
across all.
Yep, I agree. But I agree with Madam Chair that it would be best to run it by the department heads so that they can at least give their feedback on it, so we know that.
Okay, I will do that at the Department of Meeting. Stuff. Cool.
All right, so we don't need a vote or anything like that. Okay,
No, we can put that on the next one.
yeah, for the readings, we have a lot of readings on the 21st. And a lot of appointments.
I'll volunteer to share the reading with Madam Clerk, if you don't mind.
That would be perfect. Acceptable to me.
You could just let the chair read off the thing and then just say, so moved. That's the cheating way to do, but perfectly legal and appropriate under Robert's Rules of Order.
True. All right, we're going to move on to road openings. We have 6 road opening things to sign. They are for various pipes, etc. And I think that these are probably, we added these because they are going to start paving the roads that we have already signed off on in the Timberlake Park area.
Yeah.
So these are Ash Street from South Harbor to the pump station, road opening. So what I think I'm going to do is give you all the locations and then we'll make a motion. A second road opening for from South Street at Warren, at the intersection of Warren. The next one is Emery Road from South Road to Dan Colburn Way. There's one from, and it's this one, Harbor Trace from South Street to the cul-de-sac. So that goes down Harbor Trace. And that one, I don't think Harbor Trace isn't a town road, correct?
It's not an accepted street, that's correct.
So this is, the excavation is on Harbor Trace Road from South Street to the cul-de-sac. 3 rock probes to 10 feet, 2.5-inch rods. Details of the excavation.
So these, Madam Chair, are water department requests. Martin Geo Environmental is doing borings in the road. So that's what these road openings are for. From the water department to the.
All right,
Well,
South Row from South Harbor to Emery, and South Harbor from Warren to South Row. 9 locations on South Harbor, from Warren to South Row.
well, this Harbor Trace one, it's not a town road.
It's not, so what's the deal?
So
with
what's
that?
the deal with that? We don't need to.
I don't believe that the highway department have jurisdiction to issue a permit for it.
All right, so
So I want to pull that one out.
I apologize, I should have checked
That's the
that.
only one that's a little questionable. The rest of them. To do now versus waiting. So is there a motion to, should we do these one at a time? All at once with the exception of Harbor Trace from South
All at
Street to
once.
cul-de-sac. All right, so is there a motion to do the 5 road openings, Ash Street from South Harbor to the pump station, South Street at Warren, Emery Road from South Road to Dan Colburn Way, South Road from South Harbor to Emery, and South Harbor from Warren to South Road, 9 locations.
8, okay. Because we removed one, no?
No, no,
It's
no.
just that one
of the
request
other
is not.
Yeah, I
Let
got
me
it.
look
I
at
got it.
that one, because
So
that's a
moved.
little bit, South Harbor Road from Warren Road to South Row Road. South Harbor from Warren to South Road, that one doesn't make sense to me.
that doesn't make sense to me.
9 location. This doesn't make sense because South Row goes in like this, and
Right.
Warren is here, and South Row is there. So how do you do South Harbor Road? South,
Yeah.
uh,
South Road and then Warren and then goes up.
this one doesn't make sense to me. Are you pulling up a map? Okay, so let's do 4 of them right now. Ash Street from South Harbor to the pump station. So that one I'm good with. Am I good with them? Yes. South Street at Warren. Look at that.
So if I could just interrupt just very quick. So South Harbor Road from Warren to South Row Road is a very long stretch of South Harbor. Warren splits off right after Harbor Trace, and then South Harbor Road runs all the way along to South Row Road. So it's that long
It's
stretch
that
of South
stretch.
Harbor.
Okay, all right. I see what we're saying.
Yeah.
Okay, so we can do 5 of them. All right, so is there a motion to approve road openings on Ash Street from South Harbor to the pump station, on South Street at Warren Road, Emery Road from South Road to Dan Colburn Way, South Road from South Harbor to Emery, and South Harbor from Warren to South Road?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Teresa A. Marsh, yes?
Chad Sexton Duranian, yes.
And Veronica Kell, yes. So I'm going to sign these and pass them on.
Madam Chair, can I bring up something that was going to be a part of the TA report, but specifically related to this?
Mhm.
So there are a couple of items that we have noticed among the staff that may make sense for the board to designate the town administrator to just sign and approve and report to the board, and road openings appears to be one of those 2 things. Occasionally these come in are relatively short time frame. They don't, the road openings are oftentimes brought in and somebody wants to do work the next week, and putting them off to the next Board of Selectmen meeting might preclude road work from otherwise happening, or they might just proceed with road work without the permit, which is not something that we want. So I'm wondering if it might be the will of the board to authorize the town administrator to sign road openings and provide a report on the road openings to the board at the meeting, so they're aware of the ones that got issued.
So what do you guys think?
I don't have a problem with that.
I don't have a problem with
I
that.
don't have a problem with that either. It kind of makes sense because,
As long as we can see what was done, I don't have a problem.
And so I can put
Right.
a report together on the road opening permits that were signed and issued for each
I would
meeting.
appreciate knowing that it was like, an email that put them on the SharePoint just so that we could.
I can
take a look
certainly-
at that,
Right.
I can certainly do that.
right, I would
So we
want
don't
to know.
wait till your report to find out.
Sure. And so I just in an effort to try to turn things around and let the highway department issue the permits in a more timely fashion. So if the board is willing, the other thing that I think we had brought up was 1-day liquor licenses, as to whether or not the board would be interested in authorizing the town administrator to issue 1-day liquor licenses.
I'm not.
Okay.
I don't think that's, I think it needs to come in front of the board. It traditionally always do.
I'm good with that. Having it come in front.
So would the board willing to vote to authorize me to do that, just so there's a vote?
Say again?
To authorize the town administrator to sign and issue road
Road
opening permits?
openings?
Yes.
Okay, so is there a motion to have the town administrator sign road openings and report back to the board?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Teresa A. Marsh, yes?
Chad Sexton Duranian, yes.
And Veronica Kell, yes. All right, so we have a vote on that.
Thank you, I appreciate that. Thank you for taking that out of order, Madam Chair.
All right, so I have one here that is not signed. Sabrina, what do you want me to do with this one? Put it in the front, maybe? This is the unsigned road opening.
Yeah.
And then figure out what we do with that, given that it's not a town road.
Right, we're gonna need to have the water department just basically inform and get permission from
From
the residents of Harbor Trace to dig up their road,
yeah,
to bore in their road. I guess that brings up another challenge I need to talk to the water department about, which is if they're doing this in preparation of putting in some sort of water line, whether they're going to be putting a water line in Harbor Trace, given that it's not a town road. So I will talk to Dave about that and the challenge of that. So
Yeah.
I will.
That's a good question. I don't know the answer. Okay. ARPA projects, I don't have anything necessarily to go over for that today. Jennifer will be at our first reading of the ARPA policies.
Policies.
And I've also asked her to give me an updated spreadsheet of the projects, because the most recent one I have doesn't have the split out for public safety.
Mhm.
And I think we're going to want that
Yep.
sooner rather than later. So those are the only two things I have there. Moving on to 5.1, Town Administrator Update and Report.
Okay. Thank you very much, Madam Chair. So I have a few things to bring up to the board. Some of these are by way of updates. The first thing is, at my direction, the webmaster spent a little bit of time checking with other website providers and with Civic Plus about our current contract with Civic Plus to see about whether we could, either through Civic Plus or another website provider, get some greater functionality on the website. He checked with Civic Plus, got a quote from them, got a quote from a company called Final Site, and I think there's one other company that the town of Ware was using. And he didn't have the name of it when he spoke to me last. So I wanted to report back to the board that for good or for ill, the contract that we have with Civic Plus right now for the functionality that they're currently offering us, which is their kind of open use format, not their proprietary format, costs us about $2,200 a year under that contract. Any other functionality we would get from any other company looks to increase that by at least 3 times.
Yes.
So I just wanted to let you guys know that we looked into that in an effort to try and see if I think there's some interesting things that could be done and kind of more user-friendly things that are possibly done with the website, but unfortunately it would come with an increased cost. At this point in time, my recommendation would be that we stay with the current level of service we're getting from Civic Plus unless we find another option that comes in.
I would agree with that. With Harrison, just him getting the e-alerts going is a plus.
Yes.
And so I think there are things we can do on the web, things that we could take advantage of on the website that haven't been working, that are now, because there's someone who's actually working on it, whose job it is to do it.
Yes.
I think it's good. So I think we might see better functionality going forward.
Sure. And so I just wanted to let you know
There's so
that
much to do.
if you do get complaints from the website, the reality is that for our current budget for a website, this is the website that we get. Yes.
Very good, actually.
And I think too, once we have the Facebook page in place that refers to the website, I think we're going to have more people going back and forth. And I mean, even getting the contact us working, which wasn't, there were 800 some contact us
Right.
that have come in.
And so now we'll be able to use that. I do think, I agree with you that the functionality of the current website is certainly going to be increased over what it was 6 months ago.
Right.
So,
So it's a plus. So
the second thing is we got some, this is just to make the board aware. We had the annual elevator inspection done on the elevator in Town Hall. It did not pass. It is safe to operate. We have been authorized by the state to continue operating it. The reason why it didn't pass is because the vintage of this particular elevator requires an additional piece of equipment attached to it.
what in the elevator requires an additional?
The vintage of it.
The vintage.
Right.
How old it is.
Yeah. And so Stanley Elevator, who is our elevator contractor, is procuring that piece of equipment, and the state has allowed us to continue to operate it through the end of
What piece
December.
of equipment is this?
That is an excellent question. If you would like to know that, I can certainly find that out.
I would, because last year we spent thousands of dollars for a telephone that goes in there. And if this piece is required, why wasn't that found last year?
I can check on a report from Stan.
And I'd like to know how much as well. Whose budget is that gonna come out of?
I'll report back to the board when I find the specifics about that.
Thank you.
Next, we have two candidates who have submitted their resumes for the HR manager position. One of them is a Townsend resident. They both have what I would call relatively similar backgrounds in that they were in management level positions, having significant HR functions, but didn't actually work in an HR office. If it's the pleasure of the board, I would like to conduct some preliminary interviews of the two folks and see if either one of them has what feel like to be the appropriate skills to be an HR manager for the town. And then bring them forward for an interview in front of the board if one or both of them appear to be qualified.
I am okay.
And I'd just like to report that I met with the treasurer, our town treasurer, and she was going to some event, and she was going to tell about that position. See if she.
The town accountant?
Yeah. No, the town treasurer.
Well, hopefully she's going to talk about the town accountant position.
No.
Oh, the HR manager position?
Yeah, both.
Both of them, yes,
But she
both.
was
She'll be
going
talking
to-
about
yeah,
both
she was
positions.
going to update.
Okay, so as soon as I am done with those interviews, which I'll try to schedule for next week probably,
Okay.
I will let the board know if we're going to try to have an interview in front of the board and how the board would like to proceed with that.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, so this is this next issue is kind of important, which is FY23 insurance rates. So I met with Bruce Heyman, the insurance agent for the town, to discuss the FY23 insurance rates. In the FY23 budget, we level funded the insurance rates from FY22 to FY23. Unfortunately, that is not the rates that we are going to get. So, as I'm sure the members of the board who were here last year know, but maybe new for you, Teresa, we have a significant number of different types of insurance that we get. And there are two specific types of insurance that are going to significantly increase our rate, unfortunately. Our automobile policy only went up by, a little over $1,000 from 22 to 23, from slightly under 36 to $37,034. Our comprehensive general liability went up again $2,200 from $23,689 to $25,906. Our data compromise and cyber insurance stayed flat. Public officials liability went up by about $500 from one year to the next. Unfortunately, our employment practices liability, we had a $10,000 deductible on it. Went from $25,000 in 2022 to $47,000 in 2023 with a $10,000 deductible. I asked for Mr. Heyman to provide an explanation from the underwriter as to the increase, which is a significant. Mr. Heyman acknowledged that it's a significant increase.
That's 25K.
Right?
Yeah.
roughly.
Yeah, $22,000 increase, almost doubling, not quite. The explanation from the underwriter at Trident was that in the last 5 policy periods, the town has incurred $419,000 in employment liability claims, employment practice liability claims, and that laid next to a premium of $25,000 is not viable for the insurance company. So they do have some risk control professionals that can assist us with risk management to help control losses in that coverage line. So I'm going to pursue that with Trident to see if there are policies or procedures that we don't have in place that would help us to reduce this in coming years. According to Mr. Heyman, also, if some of the outstanding claims that are still outstanding are resolved, that could also help us, resolved without liability to the town. That could also help us reduce the liability, the insurance rate. But at this time, this is the reality based on the claims, the outstanding claims that the town has.
Was there any information about how much of an increase if we change the liability deductible from 10 to like 25K?
Yes, in fact, Mr. Heyman did quote and in fact recommended that dropping that or increasing that deductible to 25,000 would lower that rate from 47,000 for next year to 30,000 for next year.
Which is a 5,000.
Which is a $5,000 increase. So it's still an increase, but it's one that we
Still total about 12,000 total.
so far, and we've still got some more to go, unfortunately. So law enforcement liability went up by a couple thousand from 16 to 18.7. Excess liability, which is kind of somewhat like an umbrella policy to cover excess liability of over any kind of other policy limits, went from 12,300 to it's 17,500 with a $10,000 deductible, or 14,295 with a $25,000 deductible. So the grand total of those insurances, which is in FY22, was $118,862, and with the $25,000 deductible, it would be $132,200. So an increase of about $14,000 in that portion of our insurance. Our property insurance went up from 92 to 102. Our equipment breakdown went up.
That's 10K.
It's about 10%, a little over 10%. The property insurance. Equipment breakdown went up about $400, which Mr. Heyman said that's kind of a normal increase year over year. Our inland marine, which is a separate insurance for like special equipment, like the fire department special equipment and the police department's kind of specialized equipment, that increased by $300. And so the grand total of those types of insurance increased from 106 to 117. Good news, the VFIS, which is the insurance for public safety officials, went down. So apparently,
About 50,000.
if only. So it was $53,717 last year. That was with a $1,000 deductible. With a $1,000 deductible this year, it'll be $48,000. So it's about $5,000 that we're saving on with a $1,000 deductible. He offered the pricing with no deductible, which would increase it, and I can tell you what it is, but I would not recommend that we change that to no deductible given the other insurance realities. And then our workers' comp went from 30,208 to 31,962, so about $1,700. So the total, if we take the two $25,000 deductible amounts, is going to increase our total our total insurance bill by slightly less than $20,000 over what's budgeted.
And we have to ensure that we have $25,000 deductible.
Right. Now, those are only for employment practice liability and excess liability would be
And
the
what's
$25,000
about at $419,000
of claims.
of funds.
So, the one thing that Mr. Heyman mentioned that I wanted to discuss with the board about the budgeting process is because we cover the water department utilities, vehicles, and structures under our insurance policy. They write us a check every year. And I wanted to know if that was contemplating during the budget process, because if it wasn't, that would likely cover the gap between what we.
You would have to look at, Terry worked out the cross charges, and she did do them this year. She figured them out exactly.
That was in, I think that was in the, it was a $200,000 figure. And I think that insurance is in that.
I would have to look at that.
Okay, I can certainly follow up
You
on
should
that.
have, yeah, so Terry figured out the cross charges, and she probably figured it on the level funded for the insurances. I don't think she took into account whether it's more for water than otherwise. I think she just went proportionally.
Yeah.
By the amount of the budget, total budget of the town, the water department budget versus. So,
So Mr. Heyman indicated that he goes through, they itemize the water department's bills. He itemizes the bills for their structures and the bills for their vehicles, and that's what we back charge them. So I can certainly follow
I
through.
don't know that that's what happened.
So I can follow up with that. The other, so my suggestion and what I've asked Mr. Heyman to do is, generally speaking, these insurances are pay up front. However, last year, I believe he said he had the MEGA, which is our workers' compensation bill, broken into a quarterly fee, a quarterly bill at no extra charge with no fees added to the town.
Didn't we ask for that, didn't we?
Yeah, I believe
Yeah, we did.
he indicated that happened last year. If we did that this year, we would be able to make all of our other pay. If we took the $25,000 deductibles on those two items, asked for a quarterly payment on MEGA, which I've already asked them to do, we would be able to make our payment in full with the allocated amount, and would need to go to town meeting for funding from some source to pay for the remaining amount of our workers' compensation insurance.
Okay. And I think we can probably do that in a special town meeting. Should we have enough free cash to cover that?
That would be my
And I
suggestion.
think we should.
Yeah, we should be able to.
Depends on how much is encumbered this year, but there should be, we should talk about budgets.
Isn't it? I mean, literally, it was a month ago we talked about it, but now we get to talk about it again.
This is how it started last year too.
So
Well,
that's
We got to get ahead of it,
something-
and that's the reality. So,
I do have one question,
yes,
and I wouldn't do that for this year, but is it possible to get quotes from other agencies in the future?
so I had a conversation with Mr. Heyman about it, and he said, absolutely, we could definitely go out to bid. We would need to start that process early in 2023. So in January, February 2023,
That's
because
what I
we'll
think
start
we
doing the
should do.
reallocate, start doing the evaluation in April to get everything on board, and we'd want to have a company. So I can certainly put together an RFP for all of these town insurances at the rates that we had them for this fiscal year.
Well, if I remember correctly, we wanted to do it this year, but we were just caught up with all the other things that we had going on.
Right.
I think that's what Mr. Heyman indicated.
I had sent to Ross early on, but there was just so much.
I think, yeah, they just ran out of time to
Right.
get that done before
Right.
the town meeting
And
started
he was
hitting.
part-time or full-time. and-
Yeah.
But we can definitely do
It takes
that and
time.
look at it this year and try to allocate. The other thing is I am gonna this week reach out to insurance counsel and try to find out what the status is of the outstanding employment cases that we have and
I think that would be
and
good.
what are the possibilities that we're going to get any kind of resolution on them before they need to start re-underwriting us in the spring.
Right.
Because if we can get some resolution on those cases and not have outstanding liability, it will likely reduce our insurance exposure to the company, and they could give us better rates come April
That sounds good.
if we get
These
those
are cases that had happened before this board.
Yes.
Just want to be very clear on that.
Yes. No, I know that these are all, well, most of them are vintage cases.
Vintage, like our
Yes,
elevator.
Vintage. So I'm sorry to be the bearer of bad news with that, but I did want to let you know as soon as possible. So if it's the pleasure of the board, I will instruct Mr. Heyman to adjust those two deductibles to $25,000
Yes.
and proceed with the,
Do you need a vote on that, or are we good?
I think we're good. I think I can just
Yeah, I'm
move
good
forward
with
with
that.
that. Okay, that's the rule, okay. Okay. So I mentioned this to the chair, but I want to let the other members know. We recently got a request from the unions in town as to whether the board would entertain allowing a rollover of an extra week of vacation for union employees as a result of kind of both COVID and kind of internal structural issues not allowing people to take vacations. Similar to last year, so a second week to authorize a second week.
I'll start. I just don't think, especially, I personally wouldn't approve of it if it was from the union employees. So for me, it would have to be for all employees, and I just don't think, it's, a lot, we're gonna be able to support that. If they were all on a queue, are they on a queue?
Accrued vacation.
Vacation. No,
There was no
and
accrued
so that's
vacation
my
in there.
problem with that. It's like, I certainly could consider it, and we're like, when we go to collective bargaining, to think about it at that point, but just to bring it before the board now, I think it needs to be part of that, and I need to think that personally, I'd like to see everybody to be on a schedule that's acute, and we can have, so much.
So I did mention we have received multiple requests from employees, individual employees who are concerned about the fact that they are likely to lose their vacation time because they weren't able to take it either because of COVID issues in their department or lack of staffing in their department. And they made a request to roll over a second week. So I do know the board did do it last year. I understand that there's a concern about building up folks' vacation and the concern that they're just going to turn around in July and step away.
It's because of the dubbing of all vacation on July 1st. At the beginning of the fiscal year. And I agree with Teresa in that I would rather see vacation accrued. You know that.
I do.
Yes. So yeah.
And if we could get that in the contracts, I'd be willing to consider it.
Well, we have, and I agree with you, there are, number one, I just feel that we need to be fiscally responsible, and this was a concern of mine that was going to happen, and now it is. I assumed something would happen, and this is the reality to it. I don't want to liken it to something personally for me, but being somebody in the human services field and having to be mandated to work with individuals with COVID over the past 2 years, I lost a considerable amount of vacation time, considerable amount, because of this. Having said that, there have been other options that were, their sick time was being reciprocated by the state. If they had to take COVID time, they have been reciprocated. So I don't feel that it's, I just don't see that. Number one, can we afford it as a town? I don't think we can. And number two is, I do believe that collectively we need to get all of these agreements on the same page with accrual so that we as a town can budget better. This financially, it puts us in a very uncomfortable situation.
The thing for me is there were people in particular departments that, and it wasn't COVID related, it was staffing related,
Mm-hmm.
weren't able to take vacations. But we can't grant the rollover to individuals, because if we do that, then it will definitely get grieved that we've allowed this person and not that person, because it's a union issue. So I would, and Eric knows, I'm uncomfortable with the rollover because of the dubbing at the beginning of the year. Everybody gets all their vacation.
Mm-hmm.
So if you are, and I don't know that anybody's thinking about leaving, but if you were, the day you leave is July 2nd. That's when you give your notice. And you've just gotten an extra week vacation.
I would say this, and not to, I don't want to suggest that your concerns about that are should be taken lightly, because I think they're real. It is June 7th, and the board hasn't taken any or made any indication they were going to take this action before now. So this would only be to the people who are now, with 3 weeks left in the year, in a situation where they weren't able to take vacation.
That's true.
Other people have already taken it if they had the ability to. The only people I think who would be in this situation now are legitimately the people who weren't able to take vacation in the past year for whatever reason, whether it be all COVID related or as with some of the individuals, purely staffing related because their departments were decimated. And so the chances of a large number of people being able to take advantage of something like this, if the board did it now, are slim. I mean, my guess would be it would be a handful, and that would be it at most. But that's just because of the lateness of the year that we're in right now.
Until the next time.
That is
I
true.
also feel that, when I first was elected for this position, I worked very hard to make sure that the pay scales were equitable. Madam Chair and myself worked very hard on getting everybody on the matrix, bringing them up to the pay in which I felt was very equitable. So it has nothing to do with, I value the employees that we have here, and they all do a phenomenal job. We made exceptions before, and I feel like every time that we do, this is the last time we're going to do it, and then something else comes up. And it's been that way for, all of a sudden this next one comes up, and it has to be an exception because of, a certain parameter. I think that I'm kind of, let's wait for collective bargaining and be able to straighten this out the way it needs to be straightened out. That's just my opinion.
Okay, all right.
So that's that.
Speaking of the ARPA reallocations, I wanted to let the board know that I already have a request for reallocation. I believe I mentioned it to you, Veronica, from the Council on Aging, to reallocate some of their money to fund the assistant director position. So that's obviously not something that we can decide now, but I wanted to.
No, we should look at that though.
I wanted to let you know they found there was an earmark that came through that Corinne was able to spend on some of the equipment that she was going to spend ARPA money for. So she was using an earmark to purchase that and to pay for these equipment invoices. So that's how she believes she can free up.
We should look at that.
So-
I would like to, yeah, to see that. We should definitely look at that.
Um, I have some, I guess it's interesting news. Last week we had, and members of the board may already be aware of the issue with Coppersmith and Penny Lane regarding their unaccepted status and unfinished status.
I
A,
know, yes.
Coppersmith and Penny?
yes,
I was aware of
Harbor Trace.
Harbor Trace.
Coppersmith.
No, I wasn't aware.
Okay, so Coppersmith and Penny Lane, as I think Sabrina could tell us, that she lives on one of those streets, are two streets of a fairly small subdivision that was approved back in the early 2000s, and then the developer went bankrupt
Yeah.
before the streets were completed. A third party has taken over a third street in that subdivision, cleverly named Lois Lane.
Yes.
Superman fan. And so that one is not a part of this concern because they're on the hook for finishing that, the party that took over that completing the subdivision. But the first two streets in the subdivision, Coppersmith and Penny, were never completed.
I'm sorry. Coppersmith, that's on Pine
Yes.
What is never completed with? Because I go up and down that road.
It doesn't. It hasn't been hot topped. I think there's just, what would you call it?
Yeah, the field.
It's just it needs a final top coat
Oh,
on
okay.
the road.
Was
Looks
everything
better than
else,
a
is
lot of
there,
roads.
As to the status of what everything else was finished, I'm not aware. I only know what the resident who came in to talk to me about.
so does the town plow those streets? Does the school bus go on those roads?
No.
No, okay.
Uh,
So they're not.
So they're not-
so they are not town roads. They're clearly not town roads at this time. However, the resident said that pre-COVID, he came in with concerns to the former town administrator and former executive assistant about the fact that this developer had gone bankrupt and wasn't there a bond that could finish these roads.
Is that?
And he was told by the executive assistant that yes, the town had cashed in that bond and dropped it in the general fund. So, Mike Crowley and I have been trying to work over the last week or so, trying to figure out if this is actually true. And if so, how much was the amount that was put into the general fund?
Yeah, fine, yeah.
And so I am pleased with Mike to say that Mike tracked it down. He found the bank that had the loan and he's getting the final information from that bank. But the bank did indicate that that check was in fact cashed.
Well, there's other issues
Tri-party agreement.
that are in that particular area as well, because there are 2 units that are affordable housing units. 3. Well, there should have been 3. One was sold at market value. And if that unit was sold at market value, the difference between what it was, the deed restriction was for and the actual market value price, there should have been funding that was sent back to the town as well.
Okay.
And then one of the lots wasn't ever built up.
Correct, but it should be an affordable unit.
Right.
It's
But they
probably
never
not.
hit it.
Probably never will be.
Vacant lot right
It
now.
never will be.
Right. So I can ask Mike to follow up on that affordable unit and see what, if anything, happened during a sale. That's something that should be part of a disclosure in a sale of
It
property.
has to be. It has to be.
And-
And we have been, I shouldn't say we because I'm acting as a selectman, but I know that the Housing Authority has been trying to track how do they, if they have an affordable house that goes to market, how are they notified that it's going to market so that they can track it, so that if there is that difference that goes through DHCD, how does the town get it? Because I think that also had went into the general fund.
Right. So I'll ask him to take a look at that wing of it. So it feels like if we cashed in the bond, that we may need to
Uncash.
figure out how to take that, find that amount of money somewhere to put towards finishing off that road. Now, it may not be enough to finish it, in which case, unfortunately, then it would be on the residents to finish the rest of it, to fund the rest of the finishing of that road, to bring it into ability to be accepted. I think that's what the ultimate goal is. But
There has to be
the amount
there's a
that
lot that's involved in it
Yes.
because of the length of time. There needs to be
yes,
there's a lot.
this is a large problem, and I wish that we hadn't cashed in the bond because then we would be out of it.
Why on earth would we have cashed in the bond?
I think that would be a question for the people who did it. And I don't know why. I don't know why you would those aren't supposed to be put into the general fund anyway.
Right,
They're supposed to be kept in a separate fund by the account
but
to be
that's all
specific.
right. That's gonna count.
By the way, but I wanted
okay.
to make you aware that we're trying to follow up on this. And as soon as I have the final information, I will let the board know.
Thank you.
And I will ask Mike to look into the affordable unit and whether or not there's any information we can find in public records about that.
Yeah, that would be good.
And if Mike is willing to find other money, I've got a couple more scenarios to throw out too.
Hey, let us know. This is things that we do. Similarly, it appears that we have one of the things that Terry found before she left is there's actually money that the town has for Harbor Trace.
It's not a lot though.
It's not a lot. It's like $4,000.
Right. We looked at that when
When they made the request to come in. And,
yes, we looked at that. So there
but-
is.
But just because these things,
And the developer is still, well, there's that attorney, you know about that, right? The attorney that the developer was working with is going to, we should talk.
okay.
And so, okay.
Yeah, there's nothing that I would be asking for the board to do. This is an informational piece to let you know that is kind of something that the staff is looking into to try to get a full picture of what happened with the Coppersmith development. And we'll look into the affordable housing piece of it as well.
Okay.
Okay.
Next.
But wait, there's more.
But wait, there's more. Well, this is more of a conversation specifically with Chaz about the building department printer. So after the meeting, I can certainly talk to you about that. The third thing, so this last one is probably a third rail, so I'm going to bring it up, and please feel free to tell me to shut up and go away about it. But I know that, well, so I have heard that in the past there was a kind of not completed investigation as to the creation of a public works department that would consolidate the highway facilities and parks and
I
cemeteries.
have that. I can send it to you.
Okay.
It was, this was 2016, roughly. And there is a report, and I have it somewhere.
Okay.
I know I have a hard copy. It was something I wanted to talk to you about.
Okay.
Because I would very much like to have a town engineer.
Me too. I think that would be, that's a big file.
I have a lot of stuff.
Okay, well, this is more of I wanted to bring it up to the board that this is something I wanted to investigate, if the board was willing to have me investigate it, because I think that there are some efficiencies that could be gained from a consolidation of those departments under one roof.
I just came upon that
One boss.
again, the, 'cause that one has been on my radar.
Okay.
But it might not be in this, I have many
We
folders
can-
and much paper.
We can certainly touch base about it after the meeting. I don't
sounds
want to.
good.
I don't want to take
Yeah.
up.
I might
meeting
have it by
time
1
for
o'clock
that.
tomorrow. So-
Anyway, it appears to me from a 10,000 foot view that that's something at least worth looking into in town. So that there could be, so that for instance, the highway department doesn't have to pay $28 an hour, and I'm making up that number, $28 an hour CDL drivers to do $16 an hour laborer work.
Mhm.
If they could use a guy from Parks to do the laborer work, and they could spend their time doing the things that meet their pay grade. It just seems to me like there could be some efficiencies. No, done. And with that, that would be it. Thank you very much for your time. I apologize for it being so long.
No, thank you. DPW. I'll find that. I came across that just the other day, and it was on my list, so.
Yeah, well, great minds think
All
alike,
right.
right?
All right, moving on to liaison reports. Are there any?
The only thing for me is the finance committee is meeting on Thursday. I'm traveling to Rhode Island at that time, but I will be able to attend by Zoom with my husband's brother.
Oh, this coming Thursday?
Yeah.
I guess, while I'm thinking about it, audit committee, because this is related to FinCom. For the FY '21 audit, Melanson, he is presenting to the audit committee on Thursday, the 23rd of June. I have the Zoom link already. We would, instead of, by policy, they are supposed to report to the audit committee, and then the audit committee reports to the Board of Selectmen and FinCom. But it seems to me that why not just have everybody attend and make it a joint meeting of the audit committee, the Board of Selectmen, and the FinCom.
I'll let them know.
So Don Hayes knows because he's
Oh,
on
he already
the audit
knows.
committee.
Okay.
And so I'm going to be posting that by the end of this week for the audit committee, and then it's up to the Board of Selectmen and the FinCom to post joint for that.
I apologize. That just reminded me of one thing that came in today that I neglected to put on my list, which is we do have a request from our bond rating council for a copy of the FY '21.
It's not complete until FY '23. I mean, until January 23rd, not FY '23,
June 23rd.
June 23rd. What did I say?
January
January. I'm very
23rd.
worried.
Which was making me very worried because they had some threatening language in this. And I think it's, so I will forward that correspondence on to you as a representative of the audit committee, just so you can see.
We had wanted to meet Thursday this week. That was the original, but the 9th or the 15th, then Melanson came back and said, no, the week of the 20th would be better.
So I apologize, Teresa.
Yeah, that's all right.
I didn't mean to panic. Everybody was okay.
And the only liaison position that I have that I really haven't, I have introduced myself. I said we get together. I haven't got time yet, or I didn't follow through, but I'm not sure of their meeting schedule. I haven't got any meeting invitations or anything. And that is to the housing authority. Are they a regular meeting? Is that just? So
Yeah, it's
I'm not-
posted.
It's just look for the post.
Yeah, we have, Jody.
Yeah, I wrote to Jody and she said she's looking forward to working with me, but I didn't follow. I guess I'll have to see.
We
Because
just,
normally most everybody else sent me back and told me I can't meet. So
yeah, we
I
usually
missed it.
we've been meeting on Wednesday, the middle Wednesday of the month.
Okay, I'll follow up with that. So that's the only one my last committee, and I gotta get better with, I guess.
I had a meeting last night with the water department, and we are when we had our informational session in regards to PFAS for the town. We had a woman there from the state that talked about the PFAS issues and the possibilities of where it's coming from and that sort of thing. In lieu of hearing some comments in a Board of Health meeting in regards to that, the water commissioners would like to hold just a work session meeting with the Board of Health, or water commissioners, and the Board of Selectmen, so that we're all on the same page with the same state agency, so that we have the same messaging that we're giving out to the public. The concern is that we're not looking at the causes of where this came from. It's that we're looking for the remediation, so we need to be on the same page. So I agreed to bring it in front of the board. So they would like to be able to, at some point, schedule just a work session, maybe an hour. I know that the water commissioners were saying that it's easier to do at 7 o'clock at night, and we can do it via Zoom. It doesn't necessarily have to be in person. So,
Do they have a date in mind when they would like to do this?
I said a Wednesday, and they said yes. That would be fine. So we'll, I would like to see it sooner rather than later.
Okay. And it's a joint meeting with water?
In Board of Health.
Okay. So figure out one.
There was also some concerns, I didn't bring them to your attention, in regards to the roof over at the rec center. The roof has been replaced, but there is also water damage that had occurred in one section of the roof. And we would, the rec department would just feel comfortable if somebody could investigate if that was to be repaired as well, because I believe that was part of the bid.
Okay.
To do the work that is in the attic space there, that should be done. The other I talked to you about already, so I don't need to bring it up here. I think that's all I have.
Okay. Public safety, I have nothing. We did the RECC thing. All right. Announcements and communications. We have a fair amount for that. So I am going to, let me see, give this to you, Jazz. This is all of it. You have the one request to put on for the time-sensitive letter, the opioid task force.
Yes.
So if you want to read that and then pass on to, I guess I should say that there is the one thing I could say, Open Space and Recreation Planning Committee met last night. And I would just like to remind the whole town to please fill out the open space survey if you haven't already. And that it's right now on the red alert on the town website. That's how you can get to it. So, and once we have our Facebook page running, that's something that we could put up there. It's going to be open until June 30th. So, and the more people we can get, the better.
I do want to thank people for the high response we had, but we need more. There's always that.
So,
Thank you, Madam Chair. I did want to reiterate some things for the opioid task force. This is for Franklin County in the North Quabbin region, which really also kind of dovetails into the Central Mass. This is a letter directed towards parents and guardians, and this was sent out on June 1st. And basically what it entails is that, I'll read it. That's
Yeah, I
what
think
you-
you should.
Okay. Dear parents and guardians, for many years, preventing addiction in our young people has been a focus for public health officials, educators, and educators. Overall, our students and young people make excellent decisions about avoiding cigarette, alcohol, and other substances based on data from the Communities That Care Coalition. The rates of use in nearly all substances in our region have declined substantially in the last 40 years, which made an article in this week's New York so devastating to read. Fentanyl-tainted pills bought on social media cause young drug deaths for some. Young people purchased what they believe to be Percocet, Adderall, and Xanax through widely and popular social media and messaging apps such as TikTok, Snapchat, and WhatsApp, thinking it would alleviate them with stress, anxiety, and other physical or psychological pain. They swallowed that one pill and within minutes went into overdose. The illicit pill market these days is heavily contaminated with fake pressed pills made to look like prescription counterparts, but contain potentially lethal doses of fentanyl. Fentanyl is a synthetic opioid roughly 50 to 100 times more potent than heroin or morphine, and is what's driving much of the overdose deaths currently. As medical providers, we have taken care of students in Western Massachusetts and have exposed who have been exposed to these pressed pills, one of whom died recently. Please talk to the young people in your life about the importance of never taking or purchasing any prescription drugs from the internet. Most parents don't understand the social media world our kids interact with gains access to a poison pill that's masked as another drug, and it's shockingly easy. The DEA has some good material on this, including the One Pill Can Kill campaign, which can, let's just go to the bottom line, and that's any drug purchased illicitly off the street or from the internet should be assumed to contain fentanyl and be deadly. If you have any questions, we do have, I can ask the chair if we can put the letter on maybe the announcement on the website, which has a QR code that brings you to the opioid task force for Western Massachusetts, and it'll give links to a lot of state agencies involved in it. But because I'm in the field, I'm seeing a lot of fentanyl deaths in regards to simple things like marijuana that's been bought on the street, and it is becoming very alarming in our community. And I wanted to make sure that I passed that on. And then this one.
There's one about, there should be more than that in there. There should be several. Besides that letter, there should be the Xfinity increase for certain.
I have these ones.
And there were the decisions from the planning board for the mixed use at the new building. There are a few.
Okay, so let me move on.
You can paraphrase, you don't have to read the whole thing.
So as a general announcement, we did receive on May 6th information from this Xfinity that there would be an increase starting August 8th due to the change in business course for AMC plus on demand will go from $6.99 to $8.99. Just general information. On July 8th, that's the same one.
That is this is, the planning board has officially appointed Laura Schifrin as the Montechusett Regional Planning Commission.
Oh, okay.
That's what we were talking about earlier, that I'll be attending for her behalf on Thursday, apparently.
You'll be the
I'll be a voting
voting member.
member.
So Laura's the voting member unless she can't be there. And then the other Townsend rep is the voting member, so.
Also want to announce that the Townsend, and this is on our webpage, the Townsend Band Concert Session is starting. We had our first session last week, right? If I remember correctly. For most of you, I'm sure you know, but each week is sponsored by different events, different weeks. I'm sorry, the first one is this Thursday. This Thursday is going to be Boy Scout Troop 10. They'll be selling hamburgers, hot dogs, cheeseburgers, watermelon, etc. The band will open the concert at 7:30. And I think it was said on here. Yes, there is information about the Girl Scouts are selling ice cream and lemonade. Pack 11 is also selling country meat beef sticks. I think that's what we used to call jerky, but I'm not sure.
Yeah.
The band will be directed by Ken Arsenault, former high school, Torquay Middle School band director. And that's June 19th, this coming Thursday.
Okay. So those are our announcements. Our next meeting is June 21st at 6 p.m., but
Do we want to have a discussion about the July 5th meeting?
I think we should. I did, in the SharePoint, I put up for the 1st and the 3rd for every month, and I put an agenda in with the link, but we can change anything that we need to. Of course, we do have to talk to TCAM if we change the date of the meeting.
So yeah, so I guess there would be a question as to whether or not the board members would be present for the 5th.
I will be here on the 5th. But what about you guys?
I'll be there.
What about you?
I don't have any plans for.
You're going to say I don't have any life.
I don't have any life, so I will be here.
None of us
I
do.
don't currently have any plans. If it's the will of the board, Sabrina and I, or you and I can work to have a shorter agenda on the 5th, if that's possible, and try to put more onto the 19th.
Is that possible?
Is that possible? Maybe
Well,
not.
yes, we always strive for that. We aren't always successful, but we do strive for that. So yeah, we could do that. So
Go
Yeah.
forward with the regular meeting on the 5th, and we'll.
go forward with the regular meeting on the 5th. I just have it the 1st and 3rd all the way through. That means in August, there are actually 3 Tuesdays, but I left that last Tuesday out. I thought, no, we just doing the 1st and the 3rd.
Yeah.
And that should be good.
I will be missing at least one of those.
The 1st or the
I just
3rd?
want to warn you
The
about
first.
The 1st.
the 16th, the second Tuesday in August. I will be up near Bar Harbor, and I'm in a wooded cabin area. I'll do my best
Oh,
to do
now,
now.
we have had meetings from the campground.
But I can assure you, I worked from there before.
With
have
husbands
been
coming in with
expensive.
lanterns.
Oh, boy.
We did.
It is truly going to be, it is a very rustic area, and my children will be up there with me, so be prepared. But I will be able to attend. But if you wanted to push it to the 23rd and do the 2 meetings, the 2nd and the 23rd.
The 26th, you mean? Are you talking July?
August.
August.
But I'm more than willing to call in for me and just,
It may make more sense to talk about that in July
yeah,
if
we can
people.
wait till,
other
Yeah,
people-
I'm okay with pushing it to the 23rd.
because we have that extra Tuesday.
Yeah, I'm okay with that. If you want to do that.
Are
way.
you good with that?
I'm okay.
I as I say, I know that I'm going to be out for 2 weeks,
Uh-huh.
but I'm almost certain that I will be back by the 23rd. I think I might be coming back that Sunday.
So skipping the 16th might be good.
Yeah.
All right, let's move it to the 23rd right now. I'll send you an email for the link. All right. So that's good for me, actually.
So we got the next meeting. I make a motion that we review and sign payroll and bills payable warrants out of session.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
All those in favor?
Teresa A. Moss, yes.
Veronica Kell, yes. Jack?
Yeah, second Uranian, yes.
Don't tease me about January. All right.
And then I'll make a motion to adjourn at 8:58.
Sounds good to me.
The last bell was
Second.
trying.
Yeah. All those in favor?
Teresa A. Moss, yes.
Just Sexton Uranian, yes.
And Veronica Kell, yes. Thank you, everybody.